CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
Welcome to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host, Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. We have a packed show today. We're going to talk about the Bills here at the top, but we will be joined a little bit later in the show by St. Bonaventure basketball coach Mark Schmidt to talk about his Coaches for Cancer event that is taking place Sunday and Monday down at Bartlett Country Club in Olean. That's the Coaches versus Cancer 716 Golf Classic. Go online and you can still get involved. It's sold out in terms of golfer participation in that, but there are a couple of receptions, silent auction. You can get involved in sponsorship. Obviously, one of the great events that with a sports tie-in, the Coaches versus Cancer campaign. And we're also going to be joined by Senior Editorial Manager of the Tennis Channel and Tennis.com, Ed McGrogan. We will be talking about Jessica Pegula, and both of those guests will be asking about the Buffalo Bills, and I guess more in Mark Schmidt's case, the AFC East, because of his New England Patriots fandom. Jonah, the Bills starters will not play against the Carolina Panthers on Saturday, so we're not going to see any more of Josh Allen. And with all the different bumps and bruises that the Bills are overcoming, what are your thoughts on the usage of the starters by Sean McDermott so far in the summer?
I think that ideally you probably would have wanted to get Josh Allen and the starters out there a little more, or maybe done a little more in that first preseason game if you knew that he wasn't going to play in the second game. And it probably planned all along for Josh Allen and most of the key players to not play in this third game. But it does seem like, this situation has evolved throughout the preseason. I think Sean McDermott had a plan for week 1, 2, and 3. And as injuries mounted, as those wet field conditions in Pittsburgh and the warm-up and everything became a factor, it changed. And now I think more players are being rested in this third preseason game more players will be rested than originally might have been the case because of injuries and, not wanting to incur any more injuries. And you look at it, Josh Allen doesn't play and different starters didn't play or were pulled out very early in the game. And the players that did play got hurt. The Bills had a number of not key injuries, but key positions and key players that from that game lost to injury, where had the starters played, maybe those are the players that get hurt, or the starters play. I thought maybe you'd see Josh Allen or somebody out just for a token series for the fans' sake in this third preseason game, but the Bills really can't risk it. They've incurred too many injuries to risk anything and losing any other players this close to the regular season. All that said, Sean McDermott also said the other day, where it seems like they have the longest injury report you've ever seen in preseason and dozens of players not practicing, that nobody except Matt Milano really has been ruled out for week 1. So were this the first week of the regular season instead of the last week of the preseason, we might see an entirely different injury situation going on with the Bills.
Yeah, no truth to the rumor that out at One Bills Drive, the team has been packing peanuts through the sunroof of every player's vehicle to keep them a little extra cushioned to get them to the regular season opener.
But it makes you wonder how hurt some of these guys are. And I'm not saying anybody's faking an injury, but that if you were in regular season mode, how many of these injuries would be ailments that keep players off the field like they are right now?
Oh, right. Absolutely. Cole Bishop's back. Mike Edwards is back. Different guys here and there. Curtis Samuel's been out, but again, like you say, nobody's been ruled out except Matt Milano. That's the thing that though is maybe a benefit, but a dangerous benefit, having the Arizona Cardinals coming 2 or 3 time zones away. I can never remember what time zone they're in Phoenix, because they're Mountain West part of the year, and then Pacific time, what I say, Mountain West, Mountain time part of the year, and Pacific time the other part of the year. Anyways, they're coming from a long ways for that season opener. They're not a very good team, and the danger of maybe taking them a little lightly, but also the benefit of being able to wade into the regular season a little bit. I mean, you can't afford to just treat this like a 4th preseason game, but the Arizona Cardinals in week 1 does provide a little bit of a runway, hopefully for the Bills and the fans, that they can get away with having a quarterback not have many reps, a first team offense that will have not scored a touchdown throughout the preseason. There are confidence issues, I'm sure, that are always at play, or however you're feeling. I'm guessing, these starters are going to go into week 1 against the Cardinals, relying on practice reps and 11-on-11 drills and going against the scout team and that type of thing, as opposed to going through the routine of game day. A lot of young players in new positions. I'm thinking not only of Keon Coleman at wide receiver, but the new guys like a Curtis Samuel playing in this culture, in this system, and also somebody like Connor McGovern in center for the first time, and has had his problems with the exchange or with the shotgun snaps. Where is he with Josh Allen? Somebody like a James Cook, even a regular who hasn't played much in the preseason and has those ball security issues, drops, fumbles, those types of things, to take center stage, to use a theater term, without much of a dress rehearsal. I think there is some risk there.
Yeah. I don't think Kyler Murray's played at all in the preseason. Is that correct? He hasn't played yet.
That's been kind of common. Yeah. I mean, the teams are doing that. They are, making it through the preseason without a lot of reps. So he could be game day rusty also.
Yeah. So going into week 1, I mean, the Bills might be, have an edge in that. They might have gotten more preseason work than their opponent, or not particularly less. And I'll say this, and I hope I'm not breaking any media rules that get my credential revoked. But if you go to a Bills practice this past week, you don't see the players that are going to play in this preseason game on Sunday getting most of the practice reps and getting ready and game planning and getting, who's going to do what.
The Bills are getting ready for the Cardinals.
Yeah, you're seeing the starters getting their reps and getting their action because they're not going to get it in the game. And it especially works well for a quarterback and wear a red jersey and not get hit. And that's going to extend into about a half week of practice and then a game week of practice. So the Bills and all the NFL teams are going to have ample time to practice and prepare and get ready. They're probably already game planning for Arizona and figuring some of that stuff out. And Josh Allen, I'm not worried about him not getting enough reps. I think more of the worry, and the Bills are guarding against this, is that they are weakened by injury at certain positions. And then you go into week 1, and then 4 days later, you play the week 2 game at Miami, having 2 games in 5 days at the start of the season with a roster that's not fully healthy is, a difficult, first step for the Bills in this season, right, and a schedule that might only get more difficult after that. And maybe, as Sean McDermott hinted in some ways, the Bills are healthier than the injury report seems, or when they get to week 1, they'll have most of these players available. But if they don't, or if guys are playing, you make that decision. Do we, get a guy back when he's 70, 80, 90%, or do we wait? And now we're waiting maybe 2 games because it's 2 games in 5 days. The healthy Bills might not show up until week 3.
And my main concern, more than the injuries, and I've talked about it on Buffalo Kickoff Live, I've talked about it on this podcast, I wrote about it even before training camp started, back when the Athletic did one of its all 32 roundups for camp. What is your biggest concern? And mine was Tyler Bass and the way he ended last season. Now he's made all of his field goals in the games, and they've been admirably done with tough weather conditions. You had the gusty winds in the opener against the Chicago Bears out at Highmark Stadium. And then last Saturday in Pittsburgh with a very brief warm-up on a wet field, on grass, with bad weather coming through, rain on and off. He made all of his kicks again, but he's missing them in practice. And he's missing some close ones. He's missing from 42, from where the list has been out there. I don't know. I mean, it was a decision that the Bills made to not bring in competition for Tyler Bass. Maybe it was because of his contract and there's no way that they're going to move on from him, or maybe if it was for psychological purposes that they didn't want him to have any doubt that he's their guy, and they wanted to build up his confidence after he made only 2 of 5 attempts in the postseason. But the erraticism from him has been an eye-opener, or I mean, not an eye-opener, because like I said, I was concerned about it even before training camp, but it's kind of come to fruition. Any concerns that people may have if Tyler Bass has the yips, you haven't seen it on television during those preseason games, but they're happening in practice.
Yeah, well, he's the kicker. They committed the contract to him and the guaranteed money, and even invested a draft pick in him, and he was talented enough and productive enough to kind of earn that and prove that he's probably one of the better kickers in the NFL when he has his confidence and he's kicking well. And just because of his contract machinations, I think his roster spot was guaranteed for this season, and bringing in any competition wasn't really a consideration for the Bills, especially with all the dead money and roster maneuvering they had to do elsewhere. If he has another difficult season, maybe there's a different calculation going into next year and the cap figures at that point. But I think a Bills fan can worry. I've heard probably more, callers on the radio or people asking questions of podcasts about this subject than almost anything else, aside from maybe the wide receivers. And, I guess you can worry about it, but he is the kicker, and I don't think there's any change. And this is just what, and I think we've seen Tyler Bass be very consistent, and wasn't he a Pro Bowler 2 years ago? He's been a good kicker.
Yeah,
you just got to hope that version of Tyler Bass shows up more often than not this season.
Maybe I'll copyright it, but I tweeted it so I could take ownership. He's gone from Bass-o-matic to Bass-dramatic. And I think it's going to be must-see TV for a while until your nerves are settled. Everybody's going to be leaning in a little bit to see if Tyler Bass makes this field goal, whether it be Saturday against the Panthers. Obviously, he doesn't have the competition, so that might be the thing we learn the most again, because you have a lot of guys playing who aren't going to make the roster, but Tyler Bass is your kicker, as you said. So we'll be watching him closely against the Panthers on Saturday, and then Bills fans better hope that he starts striking them correctly in the regular season. Jonah, any other things you want to get to before we are joined by Mark Schmidt and Ed McGrogan?
Yeah, I want to make just a quick mention to a callback for any of our regular listeners that were listening last week. We talked a lot about Matt Milano, and I made a quick mention. I said, I think this opens up some preseason snaps for Joe Andreessen, who might be able to.
We can't get through this without talking about Joe Andreessen.
Yeah, and I don't think we can get through this without patting myself on the back for calling it. And it obviously was way more than I expected. I didn't think he was going to start the game and play, as featured a role as he did, but he did very well for himself. I don't know if it earned him a spot on the 53-man roster. Certainly didn't guarantee him anything, but I think it made the case for him being on the practice squad a lot stronger, and put in play the possibility of him making the 53-man roster if that trend continues into the final preseason game and injuries and things like that.
Well, here's the thing about Joe Andreessen, and the Bills could be in a situation like this. Like you say, we don't know if he makes the 53-man roster. You would think that he's a lock for the practice squad. However, there's no such thing as a lock for the practice squad because you have to be waived first. That means he has a chance to sign with all 31 other clubs. And he put a pretty good tape together against the Steelers. And you compare that with his measurables, which are very impressive. And really what hurt Joe Andreessen was the fact that he played at UB. This wasn't he slipped through the cracks a little bit. You take a look at his measurables in terms of things like the bench press and the vertical and his 40 time and his size. And another team could look at this guy and say, we can use him right now as a backup and put him on special teams. So I think that the Bills are going to have to weigh that. If they feel that Joe Andreessen is a guy that they can develop further, and they were probably proud of finding this guy to begin with, even though he was in their backyard. I mean, I'm using finger quotes. They landed this guy who can play for his hometown team. I think he's clearly serviceable enough to pick up Dorian Williams' special team snaps, because Dorian Williams is now playing for Matt Milano. You're not going to be using him on special teams. You don't want him getting hurt on kick coverage. So somebody's got to pick up those Dorian Williams special team snaps. And why not Joe Andreessen? So yeah, I think that he may be closer to the 53 than he is to the practice squad.
Perhaps. And the other team that invited him to a rookie tryout was the Kansas City Chiefs. And that means that they were at least aware of him, had him on the radar. And I'm not sure if they liked what they saw at that tryout or not, but maybe they did. And that would be a real tough pill to swallow, I think, for the Bills, and especially Bills fans, if he got waived, then claimed by the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right. That's right.
Worked out as a player or played against the Bills in a playoff game or a big game or something like that. I will say this is an interesting scenario where I think it benefits the Bills to possibly, have Joe Andreessen exposed a little bit, to put some bad film out there. And I don't think that means have him go out there and tank the game and especially look bad, but specific to Joe Andreessen in his game.
Have him play cornerback?
Well, here, maybe safety. He played middle linebacker at Bryant and was an FCS All-American. He came to UB and moved to an outside linebacker position. I remember him telling me early on, like before he even played at UB, I'm the Matt Milano of this defense, and I'm watching Matt Milano film to kind of figure out how to do some things, and he lost some weight. He had a good year. He was, he played all year, and he was a good player. I think he was on one of the lower All-MAC teams. He was good, but he wasn't as productive and dominant. He wasn't as great as he was at Bryant. He wasn't as great as Sean Dolak was as a middle linebacker the year before for UB. And I think some of that was playing a little bit out of position or playing a new position that wasn't instinctual to him. He comes to the Bills, as I understand, they started him outside. He's since moved to a middle linebacker position, either because of depth and injuries, or maybe they saw this in him, that he seems like a more instinctual, aggressive, comfortable player at that position. And, he wasn't terrible in pass coverage. I didn't notice that at UB, but I think that wasn't as good of a part of his game as it was in being a middle linebacker that attacks and makes plays behind the line of scrimmage. So maybe if he has to cover a tight end in a game, a play or two in this game, and maybe if that play doesn't go so great, maybe it does show the rest of the NFL a little bit of what I think is maybe why he didn't get drafted and why he wasn't a UDFA. He was a guy that had to come to this rookie tryout to even get to this point in time, because maybe his ability to cover at that outside, weak linebacker position isn't as refined as the other parts of his game. So, I don't know if I made a good prediction last week, that's maybe my prediction this week, that maybe something happens in this game that makes Joe Andreessen a little less attractive to another team claiming him on waivers, and maybe that's good for the Bills.
Sacrilege, what you're saying, Jonah.
I mean, it's a great story. You'd love to see Joe Andreessen now in a home game go out there and be the player of the game, and it's almost like a Rudy story. I mean, he's a better player than Rudy, but it's almost kind of like, it could be the most interesting thing to watch on this field is him playing as the local hero and getting all the cheers.
That's right. Well, Jonah, let's take a break real quick, and then we will come back and speak with Ed McGrogan about Jessica Pegula, and she's about to go into the U.S. Open. She's on the ascent yet again after a pretty turbulent year since the last time we had Ed McGrogan on the show. Jessica Pegula changing her coach and having some problems in tournaments, not doing well at the Olympics, and then wins in Toronto, and then gets to the final in Cincinnati. So we're going to talk to Ed when we come back here on Tim Graham and Friends.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.
Welcome back to Tim Graham and Friends. We're joined now, as promised, by Ed McGrogan, Senior Editorial Manager of the Tennis Channel and Tennis.com. He's been on the show before, which makes him a longtime F of the TGAF franchise. Ed, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, friend. Good to be back. Appreciate that title. It's a nice legacy term from the salad days of Tennis Magazine, which is sadly no more, but we tread on tennis.com and Tennis Channel. So thanks for having me.
Quick detour before we talk about Jessica Pegula and your beloved Bills. The magazine, the idea of a sports magazine. I know that's, we talk a lot about journalism on here, and our listeners and our readers seem to enjoy it, actually, when we get into the weeds a little bit about the state of journalism. And of course, everything has moved online. The Athletic, of course, being online only. I do have people ask me, where can I pick up The Athletic? As though it can be on a newsstand or even at the Barnes and Noble, where you have every obscure publication in a rack there, usually for show, I think. I don't think they believe that they're going to sell those magazines. I think it's Barnes and Noble saying, if it's out there, we have it. But Tennis Magazine, what are just your feelings on not having that anymore?
Yeah, it's a tough one because, that's why I'm where I am career-wise to begin with. I mean, that was what I held in my hand, and growing up and waiting anxiously to see those covers. I mean, that to me is the big reveal. It's like opening a pack of cards, like who's going to be on the cover. It was a big deal, and I think sadly to have been there for the last rites of it. Always a tough thing. And, I know a lot of people might call me an old soul. I think that's part of maybe why I love doing that magazine so much. There is there's a puzzle, I always say, you put together that you can't replicate online. Conjuring, what that's going to look like in the pages and what gets cut and all these things that you don't really have to consider online. And I just kind of talking it out now, I think that just makes for a better product. You really had to have a conscious idea of what this total finished product looked like, read like. There is a cohesion. It's like an album, like, again, and this is the same thing for me.
You couldn't blather on forever, which I think in some ways was viewed as a blessing. And even sites like The Athletic or any long form site, we have realized that there is value in not necessarily brevity, but not just using the bandwidth to use it just to show off. Make it tight. Use your best stuff. Don't just empty your notebook. Yeah,
and for that reason, you can save some of what you have in the holster for really bigger projects and ideas that would materialize later on down the line. I think, and it always rewarded the careful reader, I felt like, and I think there was an appreciation. Obviously, that's sort of the problem, is that magazines need to be going to more than just careful readers, but I do think there was a reward for not just the editor, but the reader. And, sadly, it's just the way it went for us after just over 50 years. And just a product I'm always going to be proud of, even the last days. I think we just really try to make that as special as possible. And to your point, I still get calls all the time about the subscription and where it is and all that. And obviously it's from mostly of a generation that grew up with that. But I think that just also speaks to how much people loved it too.
Jessica Pegula, she has had an eventful year since you've joined us last on July 10th, 2023. It was Wimbledon. And as you had mentioned it, she had her 13 seconds moment, coming very close to glory that turned out to be elusive. And she's had a lot of significant things happen, changing her coach, the Olympics. She got in the win column again recently. How would you sum up this past year for Jessica Pegula? I know I just threw a lot of the things out there, but if you could sort it out in terms of what is most important and this, where she is on her arc, and somebody who even a year ago we were talking about being unusual in her later years for a tennis player, primacy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but here we are a year later, and she's still an Olympian and wins tournaments, and now on the verge of the US Open where anything can happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think the word is turbulent. I would say, where we left off is looking back, it was the right before what I suspect will likely go down as the chance that she had at the greatest source of tennis glory, and that's Wimbledon. For those who are unaware, she was up a break in the third set, 4-1, I believe, and had points for double break lead. And this is not against a player who she, would be fortunate, like just everything came together on the right day. This is against the eventual champion, Marketa Vondrousova, who by most accounts you would say is definitely a surprise Wimbledon champion. This was also a tournament where things certainly broke her way. If she won this match, I think, first of all, she would have reached the semifinals of a major for the very first time after having lost her previous 5 chances. So now she is 0-6 at that stage of a slam. And so I say this, first of all, is that this is, I think, this 13 seconds moment. I don't think it's as galling as what we saw in Arrowhead that fateful day, but I think it's a moment that will be rued for a while. But I also think this, this obvious Bills connection she has, she's got some more of that. It's really over the course of that time, since that point, she's gotten again to these peaks, these pinnacles of opponents, but just getting there and getting to that final boss, if you will, the Mahomes of the WTA Tour, the Iga Swiatek's, the Aryna Sabalenka's, clearly the top 2 players in the world. She has looked very formidable reaching that point, but arriving at that and supplanting those players has been a challenge that just has been too far for her. So what's ended up happening is the biggest takeaway of the past, year for her was really her coaching shift. And I broke the story for tennis.com that her longtime coach, David Witt, he was blindsided actually by the move. He said it came as a shock to him. They had been together for years. They'd actually won their very first tournament they ever played together years earlier. So I think we can get into that. But I mean, the biggest move was ultimately Pegula deciding that even at this advanced stage of her career, even the late bloomer that we've talked about that she is, that it's another no stone left unturned for a player who many on the outside would say, what are you worrying about tennis at 30 and being worth X amount of dollars?
David Witt had only 2 players that he worked with in 15 years. He worked with Venus Williams for 11, I think it was, and Jessica Pegula for 4. And like you say, the ascendancy coincided with her work with David Witt. What has the difference been in the past year, Ed, in her, like you say, maybe it's not an indictment of David Witt, even though he did feel blindsided and the bitterness that came in the aftermath of that. But how has that changed, if at all, anything? And I know I'm overloading this question, but especially when you get into your 30s, to me, I liken it to another individual sport in boxing, which I covered for
Yeah.
a long, long time. You would frequently see the veteran boxer changing a coach and really it having no difference because by then it's embedded muscle memory. You are who you are. There's a lot of things philosophically about how you're hardwired in your DNA and really doesn't make a difference other than just giving you a little energy or some sort of fresh perspective. And I overloaded the question and I shouldn't have, but to me, when I see a coaching change in an individual sport this late in a career, to me, I'm just wonder whether it's just window dressing.
Typically, it reeks of desperation, like you're saying there. I do think there was, yes, perhaps a staleness to the message. I think, and I think in tennis specifically, compared, let's say, to boxing, like you just brought up, you are with the coach. I mean, it is. We talk about tennis as a year-round sport. It truly is. They are together. They're partners in every sense of the word here. It is a very intimate relationship, and you have to obviously build a strong bond to sustain that. But I think that first of all, having that message for, let's say, 11 months out of the year for a player of Pegula's caliber that is playing into the season-ending championships, playing into November. So I think there was a message, that's been wanted to evolve perhaps. And I do think the Wimbledon loss may have accelerated that. I do think that is a turning point for perhaps what she ultimately gets out of her career, but maybe even that was and not that she's blamed Witt for that loss, but I do remember looking back at that match and listening to what Witt said about it. It was like, well, that was a big missed opportunity. Like he admitted as much to me in our conversation back in January. And that split actually happened after the Australian Open. It was also peculiar timing where usually you'd see a coaching switch before the new season began. This was Pegula went to Australia, played a warm-up event, and then the Australian Open, and then decided then and there to make the switch. So I don't have every bit of information of what set that off, but I think it was a combination of things. And since then, I think what has become known to me, I talked to one of her two current coaches, Mark Knowles, earlier this week. And Knowles is a Hall of Fame level doubles player, Grand Slams in just a very, very accomplished career. And he was a good fit for Pegula because Pegula, as I've written about before, never saw a tournament she didn't like. She played singles, doubles, which is almost unheard of for a top 10, let alone a top 3 player as she was.
Play triples if it was available.
Yeah, would play mixed. It just a very odd schedule. I don't begrudge Pegula for that, but it is very, it's not typical prep. It's probably not ideal prep for what she wants. So having someone with a doubles acumen in her background is interesting. But what's actually happened is Pegula, I think, for the first time, has decided to retreat from some of those draws. Like Knowles did mention to me, like the biggest thing on their plan is, paring down that schedule. And I think oddly, ironically, working with a doubles really standout specialist and him conveying to her that at this time we do need to, I think, emphasize the singles more. And I think that's taken to heart. And what's happened over the years,
that is ironic, by the way. I always like to point out the overuse of the word ironic. But you used it properly there, and it's also why I stay away from it. If you were to Google Tim Graham and irony or ironic, I don't know if it would come up except for maybe in somebody's quote. But it's a dangerous word.
It's only second dangerous to epic, which is my all-time most despised word, especially in tennis, because matches that are long are not necessarily epic. So let's
That's right.
Also say that.
Sorry to derail you there, but I wanted to give you kudos for the irony.
God bless. Thank you for that, Tim. Great friend you are. And where we are now is, and the reason, I kind of reached back out about this, I thought this was an interesting time to talk about Pegula, is that for a while, this coaching switch did not look like it was working out at all, honestly. The results that she had from, let's say, January until really just before Wimbledon, Pegula was blowing set and double break leads to players that just she would really seemingly have no trouble closing out before. Just wasn't going deep in tournaments any longer. And you really, I think a lot of people believed at that point that, okay, she had peaked at this point. And I think what's happened over the past few weeks, the biggest thing being this Toronto win, that was a title she defended. That's a tier event, just short of the Grand Slams. And then the very next week, reaching the Cincinnati final, which is generally considered to be the top tune-up event for the U.S. Open. Didn't win the title, but we're at a point now again where I think the Pegula conversation can be resurrected without there's a legitimacy to it. And I'm excited, honestly, to see where this all turns out, because to what you said, she was already a late bloomer to begin with. This is kind of late bloomer 2.0, and I kind of wonder where this goes from here.
Indian summer, perhaps.
Yeah. Yep.
Along the same lines with coaching, she has reached out over the past year to Andy Roddick as a consultant to help her with her serve. What impact has that had?
Yeah, the Roddick, that was a neat nugget brought out in not my reporting necessarily, but others found out that, she had reached out to Roddick, who is one of the game's all-time great servers. It's always been the liability of her game. She's a grinder by nature. She's the Jonah Bronstein of the WTA Tour in that respect. But the serve has always been one thing that probably is the big separator between her and that top tier. So as Knowles talked about it to me, it wasn't too much more than, honestly, a phone call, a Zoom meeting. I think they had one actually in-person interaction where I think it's more tweaks than anything. And with her age, I think there is only so much you can learn and unlearn as a player myself. I mean, that is one thing that habits are very tough to break there. So, but I think that's really going to be one of the bigger things to keep an eye on at the Open, where the court speed is so fast, and not as Wimbledon's courts, the lower bounces are very slick, but the speed of them will be such a benefit to a big server. So I think if we're going to see that bear fruit, you may say it already has, just given how she played the past couple of weeks. But I think that's where we'll look at what she can do at the Open. I mean, the serve is such a big part of it. The draw, came out actually today as we're talking, and it'll be, she has, I think, a winnable first rounder. She actually could play she could play Emma Raducanu or Sophia Kenin, both of which are Grand Slam champions within the past 5 years, in the second round. And she finds herself in a quarter with the kind of undisputed number one Iga Swiatek as well. So it's a very tough draw she got. So I think all that is really to say, the game plan of what her co-coaches and her are trying to do. Let's see how it bears out. But definitely a time of interest for her, for fans who may be listening locally to you. I always think it's a great story, just because, you had Jimmy Arias and you have Pegula now, and this is, I think, pretty rare to see talents like that just, within a couple generations of each other. Just not like Buffalo's a tennis hotbed necessarily, but I think it's just fascinating. And you got a representative of the city with the obvious Bills connection too.
And also super impressive that Jessica Pegula is not the daughter of athletic specimens. It is not as though Terry Pegula went to Penn State on any kind of full ride, nor did her mother go to Houghton in such a fashion, lengthy careers. This is somebody who earned it on her own. And yes, money plays a factor in tennis, and she was able to get the best training available, but she did this essentially on her own. I don't want to say she's self-made, because we've just talked about 4 different coaches, if you want to include Annie Roddick, just in the last few years, or just in the last year and a half. She's had a lot of help, but it is still amazing story to me of just being self-made. And I reiterate, there are some blessings that have helped her career along, but it hasn't been in DNA terms, not that at least not in the physical sense.
And I think that's why the David Witt move was, I mean, that strikes me in that way too. It is not someone who just wanted to kind of coast on to wherever this turns out. And I mean, I even think back, and you would know more than me on where the palace intrigue, I suppose, of where this all sits with the Bills and her, and how that's shaken out in the family. And it all kind of, however, whatever it all means, I think the term of her as someone who has an independence and has a sort of ownership of what she's doing. That might be a poor word choice there, but it's definitely, I think, an admirable athlete to follow, and certainly in the tennis where I think she has earned a player respect. I think you think about just like what the locker room sort of vibe is around any player in any sport. And the one thing that has always impressed me with her is I have never sensed that fellow players blow smoke about Pegula and just sort of, bow at the altar just because she's a very known name in sports. I think she has earned a lot of respect. And it's principally because she has wanted to do this kind of on her own, has blossomed really late in her career, and is, I think, just it's a good ambassador, honestly, for the game. I'm not trying to blow smoke either, but I say all that to just convey that I think she has earned kind of both her achievements and also her status in the game amongst players too.
She's ranked 6th in the world right now. I believe she was as high as number 2 last year, or 3.
She was definitely 3. 2, I need to think back on, but it's
okay.
Top 3 she's been for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, incredible. How would you handicap her chances? No, let me ask a different question, because you just gave, based on the draw, how that might shake out. And that's a big part of handicapping, who you're going to get in the path early. So a year ago, we were talking about her being at her peak, Ed, and there's been turbulence, but with Toronto, with Cincinnati, bouncing back from the Olympics, the early exit there, it seems like there might be some kind of momentum here. How would you compare where she is now in this next bit of ascendance throughout her turbulent coaching change and, some other, potholes that she's had to navigate in previous tournaments, to where she was when we were talking about her at her peak? Where is her game comparatively?
I don't think it's where it was a year ago at that time. I think it's safe. I think just needs to be a little more of a body of work under this. Now we've gotten from the prior coaching staff to this staff, and really the momentum is built. I asked Mark Knowles about the game plan, as I put it to them. I said, if you've assessed what Team Pegula is after and what you've come up with, I said, where are you on where are you on the milestone of where this plan is? Because I suspect that they've kind of plotted out short-term and long-term goals for her. And I thought his answer was really good. Or interesting, really, is that he said, we're there on the plan, but the plan doesn't always mean what your result is. It's how they are approaching really each week. And I think part of it, again, is what I said about really focusing marshaling all their resources and energy and everything into the tournaments that matter most to Pegula, and as I put it, to her fans and to her critics, because I think she actually has a lot of critics too, because of just the record that she's this mountain that this hurdle that she hasn't been able to get over. And that's, again, is the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam. So I think that where her game is now it's not, I don't believe it's where it is last year. Last year, she was not taking almost any shock losses, and just, kind of going through, we knew we would see her by Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and beyond of tournaments. And I think that's just why I'm interested in the US Open for her, because this is not an easy draw she has. And I think that, let's say she does have no problem taking out 2021 US Open champion Raducanu or the 2022 Aussie Open champion Kenin in the second round. See, she goes through that 2 and 3. I would be pretty encouraged based on how lackluster the start of the year was and how seemingly on a switch it's been flipped from now, into this point in her career. So I think, and if I may make one more analogy to the Bills of this, is like we talked about, like, is the McDermott part in all this, like that was such a big thing about, do you need that new voice? Do you need all that? And I think this is a kind of a bit of a case study in itself in that. I mean, accomplishments were there with David Witt. He clearly wanted to be on board beyond this. He wanted to see this through. And Pegula felt that ultimately he wasn't the guy to do it, or she wouldn't have made the move. And let's see where it goes from here. She probably, I'm not going to speak for her what year she has left. You probably have 2 to 3 peak or prime years tops left. And let's see where it goes.
So, Ed, I think what you're saying here is that if she were to, let's say she makes the deep run, let's say she gets past her big hurdle and gets beyond the quarterfinals of a major, let's say she wins the US Open, that would then plant a seed for her father, Terry Pegula, to say, you know what? I think these Buffalo Bills need a new voice because it worked for my daughter. Sean, you are out. Just like David Witt, you are out, Sean. What do you think?
Right before week 1.
For those,
and
right for those, for those who may be listening, I was not smiling, but I was laying on the sarcasm pretty thick. But hey, Terry Pegula has been known to see what happens with one team and try to apply it with the other. He's done it with his Bills and Sabres back and forth, much like a tennis match. He has gone back and forth and said, well, I like what we're doing with this. Say, let's try this with wait, well, it worked with this. Let's try this over here. Okay, let's talk about the Bills. I'll let you off the hook there, Ed. I don't want you to have to get Sean McDermott fired.
Exactly.
Just because David Witt couldn't hack it and has no career. What's David Witt doing now, by the way?
Witt is doing actually very well. This
is a guy who doesn't have to work another day in his life.
He went to another top 10 WTA player, Maria Sakkari, shortly after Pegula. That relationship did not last very long. After that, though, he's again working with Frances Tiafoe, another very strong American player. And I think both of them have actually, and Tiafoe also reached the Cincinnati final. So oddly enough, that day in Cincy where Pegula had reached the women's final, Witt's new charge, Tiafoe, reached the men's final thereafter. So it was a everybody was kind of happy day, I suppose. This was on Monday. So Witt's doing okay for himself, actually.
Yeah, I think just your career with Venus Williams, I think he is, his reputation is set. So I was being facetious there also. I guess that's a lot of sarcasm I've been laying on here. Okay, no sarcasm here when I say that Ed McGrogan is a mammoth Buffalo Bills fan and has his thoughts on 2024. Ed, where are your hopes Where do your expectations in this soft reset transition season?
Yeah. I mean, we have the eternal, I'd say, Bills optimist on one shoulder and the hardened sports pessimist on the other. The expectation is you just can't waste another Allen year in this window of his. I've been around long enough to know things can be taken away quickly in sports, and I think that's ultimately the biggest fear and the biggest hope, of course, with Josh. So I think to me, obviously, let's hope for the best for my sake in that regard. There was a great segment on GR a month ago. Jeremy and Joe did it early in the day where they did look back at the Cincy game, or the Chiefs playoff game, which I was at, of course. And the point that was made there was, which I really thought was pretty interesting, was the players that the Bills have lost this year. Hardly any of them really showed up to that game, honestly. And you think if Diggs didn't, the huge drop, Gabe didn't play, Poyer Hyde, certainly not the difference makers they were.
At the end of the game, you had no confidence that the defense could make a stop. And that's not necessarily Hyde and Poyer's fault, but was that's why DeMar Hamlin is running a fake punt. Yes.
So the optimist in me says you actually essentially are bringing back, in a way, and ideally a healthier way. At the moment, they are not healthy, but they're bringing back essentially the team that probably should have taken them out at home. If there was any sort of health or any sort of just ability to get over this team, there's that part of it. So the hope is, to me, that this reset is exactly what is what the doctor ordered, let's say. I think it's a great thing. I think it is a ideal thing in theory, but the fear to me is, does this really materialize on a game day? There are so many unknowns with the wideout core in this team. And I mean, the defense does, ultimately, looking back on it, and thinking about the playoff losses that I've seen, it is a defensive failure that seems to be the thing that rears its head the most at the end of these games. And it's a battered and new. It's essentially a new defense, I feel like, except for like Taron Johnson and Rousseau, and that's about it.
The cornerbacks, Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, are both back.
Yeah. So it's to me, I think I'm curious to see that more than anything. I remember we talked about this last year. I was anxious about the safety position the most. And I think it's just an overall, there's an anxiety around pretty much everything, maybe except 17 for me. I don't know. I will always lean toward the eternal optimist over the hardened pessimist, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I'm always Kool-Aiding these guys at the end of the day to a point. Right. You can find my takes if you will, but I can be guilty of leaning that way too much, perhaps.
All right. Well, this is the time now. I don't know if you get the honesty 2 weeks before the regular season begins. But they've also had a very weird preseason. They haven't scored a touchdown. The starters are not going to play against the Bears. There are all these various injuries. So I could see how the anxiety could maybe balance the scales of your optimism a little bit. So I think I think this is a sweet spot for getting Ed McGrogan's clear-minded take on his Buffalo Bills.
I think it's all we can hope for as a society. How about that? Let's take it really big picture.
Well, Ed, thanks for doing this. Thanks for blessing me with your presence, and we need to do this more often than just 1 year at a time. Let's make a point to do it during the regular season.
Let's do that. We got to talk cards too. I see a few behind you there.
Oh, you're a cards guy?
Yep.
I love them. I love them.
Yep.
These are my guys from my childhood. My favorite cards from when I was a kid. I have a Charles White here, a Dwayne Kuiper. The first card that I remember opening out of a pack, I was sitting on my sister's lap. She decided she bought me a pack of cards. I didn't know football. These is the 77 top, so I would have been 6. And the first card I remember because of the water bottle turned out to be Bills linebacker John Scorpan, who is, by the way, I think a city councilman in Cranberry, Pennsylvania, where most of the Bills media was staying over the weekend while covering the Steelers preseason game. Cranberry, big civic area with a lot of hotels.
Feels like a 2025 May off-season short feature.
On John
The first
Scorpan?
card.
Yeah, and I've actually I've gone far enough as to, like I said, I looked up where he was. I have his numbers and everything. I'm just like, what's the angle other than it just being a little too self-indulgent?
True.
John Scorpan did not have the most illustrious Bills career. We would not call his time in Orchard Park epic, Ed.
There's no irony in that statement.
No, but he was a legendary Penn State linebacker, linebacker U. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
Hey.
Ed, thanks for doing this. And good luck in Flushing. Safe travels. And let's talk again soon.
Here or at Elmo's. Let's do it. Thanks, Tim.
And when we come back from this quick break, we will have St. Bonaventure basketball coach Mark Schmidt to talk about his Coaches versus Cancer event this weekend.
This is Joe Lozito, and here are 3 real-life experiences I would rather experience again than tune into Tim Graham and Friends. Number 3, have double pneumonia and have 16 ounces of fluid drained from my lung. Number 2, drop a 25-pound weight on my foot and break 3 toes. And the number 1 miserable experience I'd rather go through again than tune into Tim Graham and Friends, getting stabbed 7 times on an Uptown 3 subway train in New York City. What are you people thinking?
Welcome back to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. As promised, we are here with St. Bonaventure basketball coach Mark Schmidt, who's about to enter his 18th season and is in his 15th season with his deep involvement with Coaches versus Cancer. The event is this weekend, Sunday and Monday at Bartlett Country Club, which is his home course down in Olean, New York. Mark, thanks for joining us to talk about this campaign, which a lot of people know on a national level. Dick Vitale and Jim Valvano, and ESPN does a lot with it on the national stage. But I think we are reminded every year that they are done locally too. And you are the man in Western New York, or maybe even the state of New York. You're the guy.
Jim Boeheim has been a huge part of this thing. Even though Coach is retired, he was an integral part of building Coaches versus Cancer into what it is today.
But back on June 8th at Oak Hill Country Club, not a shabby joint out in Rochester, Mark Schmidt was honored as this year's national recipient of what's the award called, Mark? Is it just you're just the national?
Yeah, Coaches versus
spotlight?
Cancer. Circle of Honor.
Okay, got it. Circle of Honor, and you are now in it, joining luminaries like Roy Williams and Jay Wright and Jim Calhoun and the aforementioned Jim Boeheim. I believe Mike Bray is in there.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to get this type of honor? Because you've been doing this for a long time, and it's a very important cause to you. How did that feel?
Thanks for having me. I just think it's really important that, we've all been lucky in our lives, and everybody's been affected by this disease, be it your parents, your sister, your brother, somebody. And I just think in terms of, coaching, everybody gets caught up in wins and losses, and that's how you're defined. And I don't believe that. I think you're defined by what you do in your community, the volunteer work that you do. So Jim Saddlen, who was a great coach here at Bonaventure, was the head of Coaches versus Cancer. He was the director and really built this thing. And he asked me 15 years ago if I would be interested in coming to Inverness Country Club in Toledo to play in this Coaches versus Cancer event. And I had no idea what it was. I love to play golf. And when he says it's free, if it's free, it's for me. So I'm like, all right, I'll drive out there and went out there and had a tremendous time and saw the money that was raised and the commitment that other coaches have made to this cause. And I was just, taken back by it and really have become it's been a big part of our lives. Trying to raise money, raise awareness, early detection, trying to get, rides for cancer patients to go to Roswell here in Buffalo. So at the national level, it's really, really important, but you need to do it at the local level too. And, my fellow coaches in the Big Four, Canisius, Niagara, and Buffalo, we got together, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago and said that we really need to do something in this area. And so 4 years ago, we did an event in Buffalo, and it was okay. But the 3 guys that I brought along with me to play in the foursome, we were driving back home to Olean, and we just said, so we can do such a much better job. And along, my wife has been a big part of organizing this event. And as I say, in Olean is a beautiful place, great people, but it's not Beverly Hills. There's not money flying all over the place. But to their credit, the community has really backed this event. And I'm just a small piece of this thing. But we've raised in the last 3 years, we've raised over $300,000, in this event. And we've done we brought in really good speakers. Phil Martelli was our first speaker, and Pete Gillen was last year. And we have Seth Greenberg coming in this year. And it's just the community has really rallied around this at Bartlett Country Club. And it's just a great event. We have, auction items. We have a silent auction. We have an online auction. So it's been great. We knew that it would be better than what we did in Buffalo, but I had no idea that it would become this big. It's really the biggest event probably at the country club in the summertime. So we're really looking forward to it. And we changed it a little bit, Tim, from the last 2 years. We only had it on Monday, and now we've gotten so big. We've done it now Sunday and Monday. Sunday night we have awards. We have the Bob Lanier Impact Award because as you know, Bob is the greatest, if not the greatest, one of the greatest players here to play at Bonaventure. The court's named after him. And so we have an award named after him that Jim Saddlen is going to receive. And then we have the Jim Saddlen Inspiration Award. He's the one that really created this Coaches versus Cancer, had a big impact on it. And so we have the Jim and Kathy Saddlen Award that is going to be given out to the CEO of Cutco and his wife, Jim and Susanna Stitt. So, and then Monday we have 36 foursomes. So it's going to be a great day. The weather's supposed to be beautiful up here. So we're really looking forward to it.
36 foursomes. That sounds like a sellout.
It is a sellout. It is a sellout. We have a waiting list, and and it's not cheap. It's $500 a person, and and that's why I said it's just amazing the commitment that we've gotten from our community. It's not like we got a bunch of millionaires running around downtown, but these people really get behind it, and it's for a great cause, and we just have great people in our community here.
How can people still get involved? They can't golf because you're sold out, but are there, with the auction, you mentioned those things, people can just show up and maybe get a ticket to the cocktail party or something along those lines?
They can buy tea signs. We have a dinner on Sunday and Monday, dinners that they can go to, and it's $100 a ticket. And then the auction items, I don't have the it's Give Smart I don't have it here with me. But you can get online And we have a bunch of great auction items. You know, Tom Izzo, who's a big advocate and really supports Coaches versus Cancer. You know, this is the second time that he's done this. So there's a Spartan experience where you go out and spend a day with the Spartan basketball team. You go through their walkthrough. It's a game day. You spend time with them, take pictures, get merchandise, and then you get 4 tickets to the Spartan game at night, a Big Ten game. And we have one ourselves, the Bonaventure experience, where they spend a day with us. You know, autographs, watching us, you know, the game plan, sitting in and on you know, meetings, and then going to the game and cheering us on. So you know, Josh Allen football, Jim Kelly football. We have Ravens Bills Sunday night, 2 tickets to the Ravens Bills game in Baltimore. You know, we got Atlantic 10 semifinals and finals tournament tickets. We got a bunch of stuff. If you get on the website, you know, that's how you can bid on those.
I have found this website, and it is e.givesmart.com/events/ATL, and you can bid on the items. You can buy reception tickets. You can take a look at the auction items, take a look at, you know, the T signs, whether it be in memory or in support of, or business T signs, take a look at the sponsorship opportunities there. So still time to get involved.
Yes.
With the Coaches versus Cancer 716 Golf Classic at Bartlett Country Club Sunday and Monday. Mark, you mentioned Jim Saddleland's invitation 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Is there a personal connection that drives you on this?
Yeah, like, you know, I've had, you know, family members that have dealt with this disease. Some have fought it, some have won, you know, a couple have passed, you know, so it's just, you see it every day. You talk to people, you know, and either they're going through it or somebody in their family is going through it, and it's heart-wrenching. And it's just not the patient that deals with this. A lot of times it's the loved ones, you know, and like the Hope Lodge in Rochester is a place where, you know, families can go instead of, you know, paying for hotel rooms. You know, they put them up, and, you know, the money that we make here, that goes towards, you know, some of it goes towards the Hope Lodge. Just helping people. It's just heart disease is the number 1 killer in the United States, and cancer is second. You know, and I think, you know, the COVID has knocked it back a little bit, and everybody was so concerned about COVID, and, you know, and this whole, you know, cancer research has slipped a little bit, but, you know, it's back, and we got to do our part. You know, everybody has a job to do, and I feel that, you know, one of my jobs is to make sure that people are aware of the disease, the early detection, and then raising money to try to help people fight this. And, you know, and ultimately the goal is to crush it, that there's never, ever going to be, you know, cancer on this planet again. And that's, you know, we've made unbelievable strides. You know, Norm Stewart started it, you know, whatever, 30 years ago. And we've raised, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's been beneficial, and it's been effective. But as I said to, you know, when I got that award at Oak Hill, you know, we're only at halftime. And as coaches know, no game is won at halftime. We have a second half to go. And you know, we haven't done anything yet. We put ourselves in a position to win, but now we've got to close the deal. And that's what we're trying to do now.
You know, a year ago, I believe the Jim Saddleland Inspiration Award went to Joe Mahalik, former Niagara coach, Hofstra coach as well. At one point, he was the dean of Western New York coaches, the longest tenured Division I basketball coach in Buffalo. That's something that, you know, someone could say that about you now. You've been here longer than all the other rival coaches in the Big Four. What does that mean to you? What kind of responsibility does maybe that put on you for events like this and getting new coaches involved, and even basketball elements of being the coach that's been here the longest now?
Yeah, I've been really lucky. And you're right, Joe got their award last year, and it was tremendous. But matter of fact, it was 2 years ago. And and what Joe has gone through is, it's heart-wrenching, it's tough, but it was a great evening, and we're really proud of that he came back and accepted that award. I just think, I don't care how long I've been here. I just think that there's an obligation. I've been lucky in my life, and I really truly feel that volunteering is something that's really, really important. And to do something that's much more important than yourself, to do something that you're not getting paid for, you're not getting notoriety, you're not getting PR, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And as I said in my talk up at Oak Hill, there's certain things in your life that on a dark night where you're having a hard time sleeping, that you wake up and you say, something, I'm so happy I did that. And for me, it's this Coaches versus Cancer. I'm honored and lucky that Coach Sadler asked me to be a part of it. But there's just there's certain things in events in your life that you wake up and say, damn, I'm so glad that I did it. And I think volunteering is one of those things.
When you're out on the golf course, how competitive does it get out there in these foursomes with you and the other coaches, or with the groups and some of the donors and the folks that come around?
It's a fun day, and everybody wants to win, and it's probably a couple foursomes, kick the ball a little bit out of the woods. But it's just, everybody knows, you're drinking beers and you're having fun. It's just the camaraderie with the coaches. What like Frank Martin, who's the head coach at University of Massachusetts. He's taking his day or 2 days, and he's driving from Amherst out here to be a part of this thing. And so I'm just, that tells you how much it means to him. Jack Armstrong, who's the voice of Canadian basketball, the former coach at Niagara, he comes down and takes his a couple of days out of a busy schedule to come down, and it just shows it's not, I think sometimes coaches get a bad rap, and it's all about winning, and now it's NIL and all the money they make. But when you see have an event like this, and those guys, when you ask them to come, there's no hesitation. They're here, and they're here to help. So it's a great event, and I'm just honored to be a part of this thing.
All about winning. Funny you mentioned that, Mark, because I think we've talked about it on this podcast before. You've been on a couple of times, but as Jonah mentions, and it made me laugh, and you started laughing before you answered the question, there have been some allegations against you when it comes to golf, that you maybe sandbag your handicap a little bit, that there are some eyebrows raised at the final scores when they start coming in. Would you care to address these allegations?
This is the truth. So when I get in, I'm not sure how long we have on this podcast, but so when I got invited to Inverness, I had no idea that some of these people take this event so seriously, the national one. So I get there, and Nike is the sponsor, and I get 3 shirts, I get a wedge, I get all these golf balls, and then at the end, the lady goes, when you're registering, she goes, "What's your handicap?" And I said, "Oh, I'm an 18." And at that time, this is 15 years ago, I was probably an 18. So she goes, "Well, if you're 18 at your club, you're a 22 at Inverness." So we stopped playing, and we have our caddies. And after the 7th hole, I'm like 1 under par. And the caddy goes to me, he goes, "Coach, you're not a 22." And so the first day I shoot an 82. So in 22, I shot a 60. And so we have an event that evening, and Cremens and Gary Williams are like, "Where's this Schmidt guy? Where's this Schmidt guy?" And so the second day I shoot an 84, and if you can imagine, I got a 1 on a par 5. So I got an eagle, and because I'm 22, I got 2 strokes. And so I had a 1 on a par 5. So we win, and you get more gear, And then I'm driving home and, I got all this stuff. I'm like, man, what a great day, and my three guys that played with me, they were guys that from Boston, and they thanked because the reason I got invited was Tom Izzo had something went on. And so I took his place, and they thanked Tom Izzo for not going because they had, this lefty that helped them win. But the truth, so I come home, and like a week later, there's another Coaches versus Cancer event up in Rochester, at Monroe Country Club. So I'm sitting putting on the putting green, and Boeheim walks by, and Boeheim really doesn't know who I am. And so he's walking by, he gets like 3 steps by me, turns around, and he points at me, he goes, "You're getting a reputation." That's when I knew. I was like, oh God. And now that day, if he's played with me, I think I shot 100 at Monroe. So I just had 2 really good days. But some people really think that I'm a really good player, which I'm really not.
What's your handicap now?
It's like a 12, so like I shot 78 the other day, which is really good for me. But I could go out tomorrow and shoot 90. That's my game. Sometimes it goes straight, sometimes it doesn't. And when it goes straight, I have a chance. When it doesn't, I drink a few more beers.
And then does it go straight?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's worse.
Some people are like that.
Uh,
Mark, how are you? Where are you right now in your preparations for the upcoming basketball season? What is obviously Coaches versus Cancer's the biggest thing on your plate right now. It's a big event dear to your heart, but a college basketball coach's job is never done, and I'm sure it looks a lot different in 2024 than it did in 2018.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So usually in my first 16 years here, and then I was the head coach at Robert Morris before that. The summer was like individual, like our guys would come up for 8 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever it was. And we would do all individual skill development. The strength and conditioning coach would, we would lift 4 days a week. And I let my assistants do all of that work because I'm a firm believer that, I get sick of our players, but they get sick of me. They get sick of my voice. And so you want your voice to be heard in November, December, January, February, not June and July. So I had my assistants do all of that, the individual improvement. I just sit up in the stands and watch and so forth. But now since the whole portal thing, and the first year we lost 12 guys, we didn't have anybody coming back. And we did the same thing, individual improvement and skill development and stuff. And then when practice started, it was like, oh my God, I felt like we're teaching drills, and it's like it was so no one knew anything. So in the last 2 years, we've taken the summertime and we've really put in our shell offense. We worked on defense. We put in all our drills. So when practice starts, the 23rd of September, we're not teaching drills, and we've already practiced, and the guys understand what's expected. Because this year we have 9 new guys. So it's coaching has changed in the summertime. It's all different. It's like you don't build a program anymore, something that we've tried to do in my 18 years here, and I think one of the reasons why we've had some success. But now it's just building a team for every year, because come March, 4, 5, 6 guys are going to come in and say, they're leaving because one, they're not playing or they're not happy, but more, the biggest reason is that they're getting NIL money someplace else. So we're trying to put a team together to get, the chemistry together, get guys playing together, learning each other. And so the summertime has been much bigger in the last 2 summers than it's ever been for me as a head coach.
Do you find yourself taking on those roles that the assistants did? Because like you say, you'd get over 4 or 5 years, you'd get sick of your voice, but you need to apply your personality on these kids and let them know, not only for instructional purposes, but that you care. They don't want to come to a place and have the coach sitting up in the stands.
Yep.
If they're sitting there for a few years, but they need this guy to be involved
That's a part
right
of
away.
It. Yeah, that's a part of it. But it's teaching going on, because these, even though you're going to get sophomores, juniors, and seniors that have played someplace else, they're trying to learn your system, your terminology, your expectations. So the sooner you can get with them, the better. You know, because you think about it, when we start practice on the 23rd, you only have 30 practices before the first game. And two of those practices, one is your inter-squad scrimmage, your scrimmage. You know, we scrimmage Kent State every year, right? And then our exhibition game. You know, so in essence, you only have 28 practices, and 28 practices aren't enough. You know, so the summertime is really, really important to build team chemistry. You know, you take them over to the house, and you know, you take them up to the lake, you go bowling, you do team stuff, but it's really become practice. Like, you know, like you're not doing rebounding drills and all that stuff, but you're really trying to put in some of your offense, you know, some of your defense, and the drills that we do, you know, so you're not teaching them and spending all, you know, a half an hour every day trying to teach the drills. And you don't have, you know, we have one returning guy, Noel Brown, who averages 6 points a game for us. That's all we have coming back, you know, so it's hard because a lot of times when you have a good program, your leaders, your veteran guys are the guys that teach the young kids how to do things. But because we don't have 3 or 4 year guys, it's the onus is on the coaches, and primarily it's on the head coach to tell people this is how it's done. These are expectations. This is what Bonaventure basketball is all about. And you try to build a culture. And I think we've had a really good culture because of the success that we've had with guys that have stayed, you know, 3, 4, 5 years. Now that culture is it's difficult to build because you have new guys every year. They don't understand, you know, Bonaventure basketball. They never played a game in the Rally Center. They don't understand the importance of when you walk downtown that you're a celebrity, you know, and everybody wants a piece of you, you know. So it's everything. It's almost like we have 9 freshmen, and we're trying to, even though they played a lot of Division I basketball, there's still a freshman in our system. And so the earlier you can get them and teach them, you know, the better off you are.
Having 9 new players, I'd imagine you're excited about each of them in different ways. But from our perspective in the media and the fans, I want to ask about one player being local to Rochester, Melvin Council, and some of what he was able to do last March and his journey to get to where he is now in college basketball. Just what can you tell us about him as a player and what you hope to get out of him?
Yeah, I love Melvin. I love Melvin. He is a basketball guy. He loves the gym. He loves competition. You know, he had a great year at Wagner. He graduated from Wagner. He's just a basketball guy. He's a guy that guys really like. He's a guy that's always in the gym. He's infectious. He's always has a smile on his face. And it's almost like as a coach, you want to coach guys that want to get better. And Melvin has a ton of ability. You know, he's here for 8 weeks and he's gotten better, but he's just his smile. He wants to be a player. And he is a player, and he's going to get better and better. And we're lucky that we're going to have an opportunity to coach him for 1 year. I wish we had him for 4 years. But he's an infectious type of guy. He's a leader. The guys, you know, the other players gravitate to him. You know, so athletic, shoots it as a middle game. He's a really good player is really going to help us win games this year.
You know, I also want to ask you, your non-conference schedule is out, and I think it got updated today with some of your matchups in the MTE tournament.
Yeah.
You know, you're still playing, keeping those traditions with playing Niagara, Canisius, and Buffalo every year. And it's when I see the schedule, one of the first things I look at is when those matchups are. Not all of the Buffalo teams are doing that this coming season.
Yeah.
There's some Bona fans I've heard that maybe they think some of those matchups hurt your RPI or aren't games that work in that sense. But why is it important to you to keep those traditions and keep playing those games year after year?
It's a struggle sometimes because, you know, Canisius and Niagara and Buffalo, especially Canisius and Niagara, you know, we've been playing those games since, you know, 1950. And there's a truth behind the NIL. You know, if you go to Canisius and Niagara and lose, it could really hurt your ability to get to the NCAA tournament. To get an at-large bid, because that will be, they're always looking for an excuse not to let, quote, these mid-majors or mid-major plus programs get in. But we feel like it's important, it's tradition, and it's funny, Jonah, it's the older alums, and I'm talking, the 50s and 60s, some of them would say, forget about VCU and Dayton. Like, you got to beat Canisius and Niagara. They could care less about the Atlantic 10. That's their mindset. And that's how it's always been. Canisius and Niagara, you can't lose to those guys. And if you talk to the older basketball alums, they know their records against those two teams. We were undefeated. We only lost one time. We got screwed by the referee. And so we're trying to keep those, whatever it used to call, now it's the big four, the little three. And now Buffalo's involved, and they've been involved for whatever, 7, maybe even more years. So I think it's important. It may not be beneficial in the long run for Bonaventure, especially if we lose those games. And they're always highly contested games. They're rivalries, so they're really difficult games to win at Niagara and at Canisius. But right now, it's the tradition. We feel like it's important, and Sienna's the other one too. Sienna, it's quote a lower conference, which I don't believe in any of that stuff. I don't care what conference you got, really good teams in all the conferences. But we play the Franciscan Cup, and we're the only 2 Division I Franciscan schools in the country. And probably if you look at the NIL, the power rankings, the net, it's probably not a smart game to play. But at the same time, it's like we're committed to keeping this Franciscan Cup alive, and so, but those 3 games, like Buffalo is in the MAC, so that's quote a higher conference. So it's, if you lose to Buffalo, it's probably you don't get hurt as much maybe. But at the same time, those are important games that we've got to play.
Did you play against Jim Christian's teams at Kent or Ohio or any of his previous stops much before Boston College?
No. I've never competed against Jimmy. He was an assistant at Kent for the last 2 or 3 years, and we would scrimmage Kent. One of those secret scrimmages. But I've never. I don't think we have. I may be.
Okay.
Excuse me. I may be wrong. But I don't. We might have played Ohio. No, that was with Coach Gross. That's now at Akron. So no, I don't think I've ever competed against Jimmy, who's a great friend, and I don't know if you know, but his father passed away a couple nights ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he was coming up to the event. He was one of the foursomes, and he texted me yesterday that his father unexpectedly passed. So, but he's a great coach, and he worked at Boston College, which was my alma mater, and that's he did a really good job. That's a tough gig. So he's a really good coach, and he's gonna do a really good job at Canisius.
I think it's also probably important to play at Canisius when you get an opportunity, so that way you can show your players what the Kessler experience is all about.
It's both Niagara and Canisius, they're really tough places to play. They're small. They're
because your players walk in and say, "Did I just get demoted? Did we get sent down to the minors?"
It's not like the Riley Center is the Carrier Dome now.
Well,
all right.
Comparatively speaking, it is.
Yeah, they're difficult places to play, and those games are, like I said, highly contested. They're always close games, and it's competitive, and that's why it's difficult when you go on the road and even at home to play those teams. They're really well coached, and if you lose, you're going to take a hit with the net. That's the concern. But that's the concern with a number of teams now because of the net and the offensive and defensive efficiencies, and I don't believe in the net. I think it's it needs to be changed, but it is what it is.
Mark, what impact has the transfer portal and NIL? How much has that impacted your joy for the job? Because it's not what you got into.
Yeah, no, it has impacted it. I'm a believer that the kids should get paid, but they shouldn't be getting paid what they're getting paid. Like the schools are making millions of dollars, the coaches are making millions of dollars, but there's a lot of schools that aren't, and there's a lot of coaches that aren't. So it's difficult. They should get paid, but they shouldn't get paid what they're getting paid. Coaching is like, you're like the father figure. You got, every year you got, 13 step kids, and you spend you spend more time with those 13 kids in your team than sometimes you do with your family. And it's about relationships, and it's about building relationships, and lasting relationships. And the problem with the portal is there's no loyalty anymore. Like, it's really difficult to build those relationships because kids are here for 7 months and then they're gone. And now with the way the portal is set up, where they can transfer, 4 years and play for 4 different schools, it's hard to build relationships. Because as a kid comes in off the portal and you have them for the summertime, you got 2 or 3, you got 8 weeks to build a relationship. Then they go home, and then you start, and it's so hard to build relationships in 6 months. It's just difficult, and it's no fun to me. It's like, you want to win, and X's and O's are important, but this is about relationships. When it's all said and done, no one's going to really remember, if we beat Canisius in 2024 or not. What you're going to remember is the relationships that have been built. And it's just so difficult to build them in such a short period of time. And even for the student athlete, you go to 2 or 3 or 4 different schools, like, you can't build rapport, you can't build relationships, and then here comes 5 years from now, hey, let's go back to it's whatever, family day, alumni weekend. Like, where are they going? What school are they going to go to? It's just, to me, it's not the way, most of us old coaches, we didn't get into the business to become millionaires. We came into the business to make an impact on kids' lives. And it's the portal, to me, has taken a lot away from that.
The 4-year players really become a dying breed, and I've noticed that there's a trickle-down effect on high school players and how they get recruited. I mean, what have you noticed in that end? And what do you tell a good high school player who's maybe not getting the same type of attention that they might have gotten before these rule changes?
Like, I tell people all the time, it's like, if the record books, those records will never be broken. Any of those records, points, rebounds, assists, whatever it is, because no one stays for 4 years. So all these records now, they're going to last forever unless they change these rules. And you don't win at this level with young people, with freshmen. Like, freshmen can help you win a few games, but freshmen aren't going to help you win the Atlantic 10. If a freshman has a good year and he averages 6-7 points a game, he makes the all-freshman Atlantic 10 team, and he's helped you win 2 or 3 games, he's gone. He's going to a higher level because he's going to get recruited and paid, more money. So we build out our program. We'll take a couple of redshirt freshmen and redshirt them, but in order for us to win the Atlantic 10 and to have the years that we want, we need to be old, and we need to have juniors and seniors, guys that are physically mature, that understand how to win and all that stuff. In terms of recruiting, like, the top 100 player, the 4- and 5-star kids, their recruiting is going to be the same. All right. But it's for those 1, 2, 3-star kids. Like, they're not being recruited at the level that they used to, because we're trying to build our program with portal kids. So those portal scholarships, or those scholarships, are being taken by kids from the portal, not high school kids. So those high school kids are going to have to find another route. You know, do I go to prep school for a year? Do I go to junior college for a year? It's really affected it. Because right now, like in our recruiting, we don't know, like we have two seniors, Melvin and one other kid, and he may Chance may be able to come back. He's going to see if he's going to petition the NCAA afterwards, after the season's over. So we don't know who to recruit, what we're going to need, because, you know, we have one scholarship. So we're going to try to get a portal kid, right? And then come March, we could have 8 guys come into my office and say, Coach, I'm leaving, you know? And so you got to replenish your program, not with the high school kids, but you got to replenish them with kids that are ready to play. And those kids that are ready to play are portal kids. So it's really, I wouldn't want to be a high school kid that's not a high major kid in today's recruiting. It's difficult. It's really difficult.
Mark, let me ask
But
you.
at the same time, it's like, I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I would assume that some of the low major programs may be able to steal a kid that they wouldn't be able to necessarily get if the portal wasn't what it is today. Yeah. There may be more kids that fall through the cracks. And I'm not sure about that, but that may be the case.
I think so. And even down to like Division II, I think there's players playing at that level that were Division I players 5-6 years ago, and now they have to start and maybe transfer up if they're good enough.
Yeah, and as you know, it's like a lot of programs are taking portal kids from Division II, and those portal kids that are coming from Division II are taking scholarships from kids that put their name in the portal that are looking for schools. Some of these kids, and I don't know what the number is, but I think last year it was like 300 kids that put their name in the portal didn't get a Division I scholarship. They lost out, you know, because people are taking Division II kids, you know. So it's not right now. I don't think it's a good system, you know, from an academic standpoint. You know, how many kids aren't going to graduate? Because as you know, when you transfer, you lose credits. You know, and if you transfer 3 or 4 times, how are you going to make up those credits? You know, so now like the NIL, you know, paying players is more important than those players graduating, which is nonsense. But that's, you know, and we're not going to know that for 4 or 5 years when, you know, all those studies come out and you find out the graduation rates have plummeted.
How hard does that make it for the APR? And, you know, you got to keep that number up to keep your scholarships.
Like the APR to me is useless. They need to do away with it. You know, it's like when a kid comes into your office and says, Coach, I'm putting my name in the portal, right? You're not able to discipline him if he's not going to class. He's gone. You know, a number of those guys, once they put the name in the portal, they leave school. They just take off. And so they leave here and they leave below a 2.0. And now you get hit with the APR because, you know, he's not eligible right away. He's got to go to another school and take summer classes or whatever. But that's a hit on your program. You know, so to me, the APR needs to be adjusted, or it needs to be completely blown up.
When you're recruiting high school kids, Mark, how often does the discussion include some facet of, I'm coming to St. Bonaventure and I'm committing to staying? Does that happen? Or
Never.
Even to maybe persuade you to extend that scholarship or anything like that?
Never.
Because
Never.
then my follow-up would be, how do you handle the kid who you thought was, you know, who said he was going to stay, but you can't necessarily argue with his decision to leave?
A lot of the kids is not that we're the AAA, but there's a lot of programs, maybe a little bit lower than us, where a kid isn't happy with his recruiting. He thinks he should, you know, be going to Michigan, and it isn't. So he goes to a lower Division I school for one reason, to have a good year so he can get paid. You know, and there's schools that use that and say, hey, look, you're not happy with your recruiting. Come to our school for a year, have a great year. And now you can go to a higher level and get paid NIL money, so, and then like we'll do Zooms with the portal kids. And this is what's really messed up is, you go over the academic piece and what Bonaventure can do for you academically. You go over, the style, how you're going to fit in and how we're going to use you and all that. And then, afterwards, we'll help you get a job, and we have a great alumni network and so forth. Then you open it up for questions. And you know what the first question is? Do you have an NIL package? It's not questions about, where, coach, can you explain to me again, where do I fit in? The first question is, how much money am I going to get? And that's not how it should be. But that's how it is. Like kids are making decisions, and some of them are making bad decisions because they're chasing the money rather than chasing a good career. And it's hard sometimes, guys, where if, someone offers a kid $200,000. Well, that's, think about it. When you're 18, 19, 20 years old and someone, you're a sophomore in college, and someone says, something, I'm going to offer you $200,000 to start at IBM, or 300,000 or $1 million. Are you going to turn it down? It's so hard for these kids, these young guys, to look 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. It's like instant gratification. And you don't blame them. If I was in school and someone offered me $500,000 to play basketball at some school, I'm not really worried about, playing time or whatever. I'm like, shoot, it's $500,000. And then once you get there, maybe you're like, damn, this $500,000, that's great, but I want to play, and so there's some programs that are recruiting kids that they know they can't get them right away because of the NIL money is too big. But the hope is they go there and they realize, like, all right, money's important, but I want to play. And so now they put their name in the portal, and now they're not looking for a lot of the NIL money. They're looking for a chance to play. So there's a lot of different ways to go about the recruiting in this age. And with, there's a lot of coaches still trying to figure out what's best.
How strange is it that now these financial packages are part of the recruiting process, when not even 4 years ago you get a player paid like that, and it's the end of your career and you're getting investigated by the FBI?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I remember when we had that great team with Oshun and Kyle and Jaron and Dom Welch, and we went to the NCAA tournament the year before, and then we went to the NIT Final Four. We lost to Xavier. And I remember talking to those guys after the game and saying, hey, we got a collective, and this is what we can do for you. And I was like choking, it was like, am I really saying this? And, ultimately they left for bigger NIL packages. But yeah, you got to, like we grew up where, and Skip Prosser was the guy that really taught me the business, and there was no cheating. Like there's never, ever, we're not going to buy a kid a Coke, and that's how I learned the business, never cheat, be able to put your head on the pillow at night and have and be able to sleep well. But now it's sometimes it's the first thing you talk about, it's like, yeah, we have a collective, and, we can do this in the collective. And, it's for an older guy that try to do it the right way, it's mind boggling that the conversations that we have with some of these student athletes.
Do you think that this could impact how long you want to keep doing this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because as I said a few minutes ago, it's about relationships. It's about, seeing kids grow and getting better every year. And that's, you're not seeing that anymore. If you have a kid that stays with you 3 years, that'll be a miracle. And the only reason he's staying with you for 3 years is he's not very good. That's it. He
But from a
likes
relationship standpoint, you put him in your will.
Yeah. But he loves the university, and basketball is really not important. Playing time is not important. Those are the guys that will stay. But the guys that want to play, that aren't playing, are leaving. it's the guys that are having good years. Like, oh my God, coach, I can get $400,000 at this university. How can I turn it down? So it's just not as fun.
Speaking of hard resets, you're doing it pretty much every year. Your beloved New England Patriots are going through another one. Your thoughts on, since, this is a largely Buffalo audience we're talking to here. What are your thoughts on the AFC East, Mark?
I think we're going to surprise. I think the Patriots are going to surprise. As I told you when before we started this podcast, that I think we're going to be like the 85 Bears. Our offense isn't going to be very good. We have I guess Brissett will be our starting quarterback, I guess. But we're young on offense, but I think we have a really good defense. And I think if the offense doesn't turn the ball over, I think we're going to have a really good defense, and we're going to make a run for it. We've been the class of the league for 20 years. And now we've lost it for a couple years. But I think, we got Coach Mayo. I think will do a tremendous job, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And those Bills Patriots games are, like in the last 3 or 4 years, I've taken a lot of slack because I talk a lot, even though I don't know a lot of the Patriots per se. I have guys in my office and on my staff that know, like, the left tackle that's on injured reserve, or the right guard that's on the practice squad. I didn't even know there was a practice squad. So I've taken some hits, and I've accepted them because of I think when Brady was the coach, I think we were 28-3 against the Bills. I think in 2 of those games, I think we had it already wrapped up, and he only played half the game. So I'm big enough to take it, but I really think we're going to have a good a season that's going to be better than what people expect. And on the other hand, like I went up to the Bills. I had an opportunity to go up to the Bills practice. I think it was the second practice of the year, and so we had sideline passes, and we were able to talk to Coach McDermott and the general manager and the defensive coordinator and some of the players, and I went up there, guys, hoping that I would hate those guys, that they were jerks. But they were really nice guys. They were really nice guys, all of them, the coaching staff. And, I was mad that they weren't bad guys, that they were good guys. So now, even though I'm going to root for the Bills every game other than the Patriots, because they're really, really, I was taken back, the way they met us and showed us around. And it's a great organization. And, I wish them well in 16 games, I guess. How many games they play? 18, 17?
17.
I wish them
18
well. 18
soon to come.
15 games. And then hopefully we get in the playoffs, and, maybe I root for the Patriots that third game as well.
As somebody who's been coaching for 40 years?
Not that. I'm not that old.
How old are you?
61.
Well, didn't you start coaching like right after college?
No, I sold.
Oh, right. You did pharmaceuticals.
Health,
or something, or medical
aspirin.
Devices or something.
Bayer aspirin. Bayer aspirin, yeah. 20
Barely
months.
Pharmaceuticals.
Yes. Bayer aspirin, Midol. Yes.
That's right. I forgot about that stage.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
30 years.
I've been 34 years as a Division I coach, I think.
How do you feel about somebody like Bill Belichick being fired?
He's probably the best coach in the NFL ever. You can go Lombardi and whatever, but he's the greatest NFL coach. And it's a shame how it ended. And I don't know, behind closed doors what happened. But it's a shame that he had to step away like that. And the other thing that's a shame is that he's not coaching this year. For a guy that had that much, what's he won? 6 Super Bowls, 7 Super Bowls, or been on 6 as a head coach, 2 as an assistant, I think.
7, I think, because Brady has 8.
And then he was with the
and
Giants. I know they won 1. Matter of fact, they beat the Bills.
Oh, sure. No, he's got multiples from,
Yeah.
with his Giants. He's got two with the Giants.
He's an incredible football coach, incredible mind. But you never want to see, someone that has been so successful and built the Patriots program to where it is today, have to end it like that.
So our barroom question last night, we'll leave you at this, Mark. We'll see what comes off the top of your head. The coolest. Now, the word cool is open for interpretation. So it says it adds a bit of subjectivity to it. The coolest quarterback never to win a Super Bowl.
Coolest. Vinny Testaverde.
I mentioned him last night, and Tim scoffed at that. Said not cool at all.
He was cool. He had those sunglasses. His slick back.
He did have great hair.
He did. He had great hair.
Michael Vick, Randall Cunningham came up. Of course, Dan Marino.
Cunningham. Yeah.
Steve Grogan with the neck roll.
That's Jim Plunkett. No, Jim Plunkett.
He won a couple.
With the Raiders.
Yeah.
But yeah, Steve Grogan when he number 14 when he had he looked like he was a fullback.
A scrawny fullback.
Yeah, with the big neck, long neck. Steve Grogan. Oh my goodness.
Well, Mark, thanks for doing
somebody
this.
should bring that back.
Oh,
we need a quarterback with a neck roll.
He should.
In this
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. It was Chad Ochocinco tried to bring back the single bar face mask, and the NFL wouldn't let him do it. So yeah, you just need somebody to want to be a throwback. Get the double bar face mask like the old Ken Anderson, and the neck roll. That'd be a good.
Steve Grogan was a throwback, man. Tremendous. I still think he still lives in Massachusetts.
I think he has a sporting goods store or something, and
he bought. I believe, I may be wrong, but Rocky Marciano, his brother, had a sporting goods store in Mansfield, Massachusetts. And I think Steve Grogan bought Marciano's from them.
I called him when Jack Tatum died. Wow. I called Steve Grogan to get some sort of, kind of a thought on that. And I called the sporting goods store. He asked me who I was and I told him what I wanted. And he said, all right, well, I'm in the middle of something. Can you call me back in 15 minutes? Or I'll call you. I don't know what it was, but it was that type of conversation where it's like, I'm not going to talk to this guy. He found out who I was, what I wanted, where he's blowing me off.
Yeah.
Well, whatever, the 15 minutes passes and I'm now on the phone with him, whether he had me call him or he called me.
Wow.
And
that's a great story.
He said, I've had some time to think about it, and I really have nothing nice to say about Jack Tatum. And I thought that was kind of a badass thing to say because Jack Tatum was, he paralyzed Darryl Stingley and made no apologies about it and kind of gloated over that. And And so anyways, Steve Grogan, I felt like I was talking to the neck roll guy when he was pretty much telling Jack Tatum the world would be better off without him, I think. Well, Mark, thanks for this. And remind everybody again, the Coaches for Cancer 716 Golf Classic is Sunday, Monday at Bartlett Country Club. And check out the website e.givesmart.com/events/ATL. And you can check out, it's sold out. You can't golf in the tournament, but you can attend the reception on either night, bid on the auction, get involved with some sponsorships of tee signs and the like. And obviously Coaches versus Cancer is nationally known, but it's a grassroots event too. So Mark, thank you for giving us so much of your time and for doing what you do.
I appreciate you having me. Anytime.